Thank you. We now start the joint press conference. May I now invite Prime Minister Hsien Loong to deliver his remarks, please. Prime Minister.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very glad to host Prime Minister Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim and his delegation for the Singapore-Malaysia's Leaders Retreat this morning. I've met Prime Minister Anwar many times since he assumed his position, and of course even more times before that. We're old friends for many years, but this is our first Leaders Retreat together. It's the 10th Leaders Retreat between Singapore and Malaysia, and the first since the COVID pandemic. So this is an important milestone, which reflects the continued importance we place on bilateral ties and on both countries working together positively to benefit our peoples. We've had very productive and substantive discussions this morning. Singapore and Malaysia's relations are strong, particularly on the economic front. We are each other's second largest trading partner. Investments from Singapore to Malaysia have grown tremendously, and Singapore, in the first half of this year, was the top foreign investor in Malaysia. In an increasingly uncertain post-pandemic world, we need to enhance our cooperation, in particular our economic links and our people-to-people ties. During the Prime Minister's introductory visit in January, we signed two framework agreements, one on the digital economy and one on the green economy. And we will build on this promising start to pursue further win-win cooperation. Within ASEAN, Singapore and Malaysia are working closely to strengthen regional collaboration and the centrality of ASEAN, especially in the emerging areas of digital and green economies. Bilaterally, we have a full agenda of cooperation. We intend to jointly develop a Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone, which is a substantial and promising project, which will enhance the cross-border flow of goods and people and strengthen the business ecosystem, and will improve the economic attractiveness for both sides, for both Singapore and Johor. Secondly, we agreed to strengthen cooperation on renewable energy. Singapore and Malaysia are both moving towards a low-carbon and sustainable future, and we're pursuing cross-border electricity trading, which will be a win-win for both countries. And the renewable energy potentially can come from both Peninsular Malaysia as well as from East Malaysia. Thirdly, we are making good progress to strengthen connectivity. One key project is the RTS link, the Rapid Transit System link, between Johor Bahru and Singapore. It will be the third land link between the two countries, which will make it much more convenient for our peoples, and we are all looking forward to the project's completion by the end of 2026. PM Anwar and I also discussed our efforts to alleviate congestion at our land checkpoints. On Singapore's end, ICA has introduced various initiatives to make the cross-border travel smoother and more efficient while maintaining border security. And we've also started to redevelop the Woodlands checkpoint to increase its capacity and meet the expected long-term growth in cross-border traffic. I'm glad that the Prime Minister welcomes and supports Singapore's efforts. On many other fronts, we are working together too. Earlier this month, Malaysia organized a triennial Malaysia-Singapore Cultural Showcase here in Singapore. This initiative has deepened the exchange of culture and heritage between our countries, and the economic agencies have signed an MOU to strengthen the collaboration between our SMEs and to update the Malaysia-Singapore Business Development Fund to support joint test bedding and pilot projects by our enterprises in third countries in areas like the green and digital economies. Prime Minister Anwar and I also discussed outstanding bilateral issues, including maritime delimitation, reclamation at Petra Branca, water and airspace. These are all important issues, and we will consider them holistically and constructively within the broader context of our overall relationship. Importantly, they will not be allowed to color and affect this overall relationship or detract from the many positive areas of cooperation between us. I'm confident that the two countries can work out durable and mutually beneficial ways forward on all of these issues. Finally, I thank Prime Minister Anwar for visiting us and look forward to meeting him again soon, including at the 11th Leaders Retreat in Malaysia next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister. May I now invite His Excellency Dato Sri Anwar Ibrahim, Prime Minister of Malaysia, to deliver his remarks. Prime Minister, sir.
Terima kasih Perdana Menteri Hsien Loong dan Perdana Menteri Premier dan bagi pihak Malaysia saya ucapkan setinggi penghargaan terima kasih kerana layanan istimewa di antara dua negara sahabat dan alhamdulillah kita dapat putuskan beberapa isu yang tergantung sekian lama dengan cara yang lebih akrab sebagai dua negara sahabat yang sangat bergantung di antara satu sama lain. So let me thank Prime Minister Hsien Loong for the candor, the assistance, the friendship shown, and my colleagues will certainly share with me in expressing their gratitude and also appreciation for the fact that many of these issues are able to be resolved amicably or towards the end because of your kind interest and leadership and support to our endeavor. I must also thank Singapore generally for their support in terms of increased investments and trade into Malaysia, and we would certainly reciprocate in terms of the serious attempt at settling most of the outstanding issues, sometimes deemed to be contentious by parties, but I must suggest here that it was to a large extent resolved amicably as true friends. And I wouldn't repeat the issues that mentioned by Prime Minister Hsien Loong because naturally we have discussed this at length quite a number of times. You know, Prime Minister Hsien Loong is known to be a workaholic. Every time he pulls me aside in any multilateral meetings, it will be just serious discussions, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then only he will ask about Aziza and the family. But let me say this: issues like airspace, FIR, the parameters are quite agreed upon, and this is to me a remarkable feat in terms of both bilateral relations. Issues that has been outstanding and not seriously discussed and not attempt to be resolved. So I must thank also my team and the Singapore team for looking at it in a comprehensive manner. I've always suggested that we should not take any issue in isolation and look at the whole bilateral setup and the interest to resolve the FIR issue. And even water, which has been long outstanding. Our position is clear that we have to honor the commitment and supply water from Johor to Singapore. And to that end, we will have to work jointly to ensure that Johor would be able to enhance the capacity through Johor River to supply both for Johor needs, which is also expanding, with the Basars here, and for Singapore. And I think instead of focusing purely on price mechanism, we should also look at the possibility of Singapore participating in a joint effort, both in terms of study, which can be conducted immediately, and also in terms of management of Johor River, with particularly with Johor State. And on the renewable energy, of course, there'll be commitment on the part of Malaysia to supply, because it would be of immense help. That is one of the reasons why you have increased investments into Malaysia, including data centers being set up. And our commitment to accelerate the proposal by Sarawak to export energy to Indonesia and, in this case, to Singapore, which we have agreed. Now, and on Batu Putih maritime boundary delimitation, I've suggested, although we discussed in Nanning about this 12-month period to try and resolve, but our position is that the both AGs in particular should then conduct the discussions immediately to try and resolve, because I think Malaysia and Singapore, Prime Minister, should probably, it's a showcase how two great friends can try and resolve in a win-win situation. I always, in the lighter mood, joke with Prime Minister Hsien Loong that, you know, other than the dollars and cents, let us view extensively as friends. And I must welcome his position, and even extending beyond that into education, culture. And I think that would give a very good indication to both our people that we are trying and enhance this sort of relations on a strategic basis, as true friends, as a great team. And that's why I'm quite excited with the level of achievement, which is quite unprecedented. I'm not exaggerating, but I think looking at the historical relations between both our countries, historical antecedents, clearly this arrangement, as you can see in the joint statement, and also the deliberations, intense discussions that have taken place, and the commitment is unprecedented in terms of enhancing the level of working relations between Malaysia and Singapore. And I must therefore thank you personally, Prime Minister, and also your team. Terima kasih.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We'll now take questions from the media. May I call Ms. Yeo Chun Hing from SPH Media for the first question. Ms. Yeo, please.
Good afternoon. I am Chun Hing from SPH Media. My question is directed at both PMs. So, while the causeway has connected the people of Singapore and Malaysia over the last 100 years, it has also faced its share of congestion issues. So, aside from the RTS, what new areas of cooperation or further improvements can we expect, especially in terms of land connectivity? And also, what is the potential scale and priority areas of development for the Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone? Thank you.
Well, perhaps I go first. On the causeway, apart from the RTS link, what we want to do is to make full use of the capacity of the causeway. Because the flow depends not just on how wide the causeway is, but also on the clearance on both sides. The CIQ in Malaysia at JB and the CIQ at Woodlands. And the Malaysians have put in considerable efforts to improve the CIQ at JB. I see the Menteri Besar has been visiting the CIQ at all hours in order to make sure that things are flowing well. And we are trying our best to improve things on our side too. And one of the things we are doing on our side is to redevelop the CIQ for the long term, so that I have more capacity and can handle bigger volumes and the flow through faster. And that means redevelopment, reclamation. I have to tear down the existing structure, and I have to enlarge the footprint. And I explained this to Datuk Sri in our meeting, and I'm happy that he supports our project, and we will be able to see it through. Secondly, potential scale and priority areas of development for the SEZ. I think this is the subject of a study, because we are now doing a feasibility study to see what we want the SEZ to focus on, and where there is interest from investors and market demand. Preliminarily, I think there are three things you want to do. One, improve the flow of goods between the two sides, because SEZ means special economic zone. It may mean special tax arrangements and bonded warehouses and therefore more easy border flows. Secondly, better, easier arrangements for flow of people who have to work on both sides of the causeway. And they can go in and go out, and then the companies in the SEZ, the investor companies, will be able to get the personnel they need and the right mix of professionals, skilled workers, and other general workers. And then thirdly, for the SEZ to enhance the ecosystem of the Iskandar development region as well as of Singapore. Because with an SEZ, it makes something meaningful for Iskandar as a place where investors will be focusing their attention. And it means that for companies in Singapore, they can think of having a presence on both sides and therefore having more flexibility and being able to do things which they couldn't do if they were only in Singapore or only in Johor. So we have great hopes, but first we have to do the feasibility study and we have to negotiate the MOU, and we are hoping to have that done by early next year. But it's a lot of work, and the MTI and the Ministry of the Economy on the Malaysian side, I think they will have to scramble. But we would like to see it done as soon as we can.
I think the causeway is progressing, and I must thank the Home Affairs Ministry in particular, and also Customs, for facilitating the arrangement. Because it's causing a huge problem for our, particularly workers from Malaysia, having to wake up 4 in the morning. But I think that has eased. And Singapore requires woodland, which is presently under Malaysian authorities. And I've said that, we can facilitate the sale so that Singapore can have the facility to then make sure that the arrangement, the flow is made more easily, both from Malaysian workers to Singapore and Singaporeans coming particularly during the weekends into Johor. On the SEZ, as the Prime Minister alluded to, we will try our level best to accelerate the process. We have given a very short timeline to get them to agree on the parameters and sign the MOU by 11th of January. I hope that they can succeed, because I don't think it's too much of a complex problem, because they have discussed it extensively. Both ministers have done so, and I think we look forward to having some sort of arrangement, an agreement or understanding by mid-January.
Thank you. The second question from Ms. Masita Ahmad from Bernama.
Terima kasih. Soalan saya tujukan kepada Perdana Menteri Malaysia, Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim. Datuk Seri, pada Januari tahun ini, Datuk Seri ada menyatakan komitmen menyelesaikan beberapa isu dua hala tertunggak antara Malaysia dan Singapura pada kadar segera. Adakah pada hari ini berpuas hati akan perkembangan setakat ini dan berkeyakinan ia akan selesai di bawah pentadbiran Datuk Seri?
Saya telah sebutkan tadi bahawa dengan beberapa perbincangan yang telah diadakan dengan Perdana Menteri Hsien Loong dan di kalangan menteri, isu-isu yang kita anggap tertunggak itu harus diselesaikan. Singapura ini satu negara jiran yang punya sejarah yang tersendiri dan hubungan yang sangat akrab dengan Malaysia. Dan saling bergantung. Jadi kebergantungan kedua negara itu menyebabkan pimpinan negara harus melihat kepentingan rakyatnya. Dan saya berpendapat rakyat akan peroleh manfaat yang sangat tinggi, baik sekiranya beberapa isu yang tertangguh itu selesai. Termasuk air. Isu air itu memerlukan kesediaan Johor untuk melebar, memperkuat dan memperbaiki keupayaan pengeluaran air yang akan memberi manfaat pertamanya kepada rakyat Johor, memenuhi keperluan Johor, dan juga kepada Singapura yang memang kita terikat dengan perjanjian yang lama. Tetapi kesediaan Singapura untuk membantu dalam penyelenggaraan ini bersama dengan Johor itu kita lalukan. Begitu juga tentang kemudahan keperluan udara yang juga dibincangkan dengan teliti, soal kesediaan kita untuk ekspor tenaga dari Semenanjung dan juga dari Sarawak yang akan juga memberi faedah kepada Singapura dan keuntungan kepada Malaysia. Jadi kita harus memanfaatkan semangat persahabatan di antara dua negara ini untuk memberikan keselesaan yang lebih baik kepada rakyat kedua-dua negara.
Thank you. Let me invite the third question from Mr. Kamarudi Mape from TV3.
Soalan untuk Datuk Seri Anwar. Datuk Seri, banyak-banyak isu tertunggak termasuk yang Datuk Seri sebutkan tadi. Isu manakah yang dilihat yang agak positif, yang agak cepat perkembangannya, dan bidang mana pula yang dilihat agak perlahan progresnya?
Tentu kita nak dengar daripada Perdana Menteri Hsien Loong juga. Tapi bagi saya, isu-isu yang tertangguh lama, termasuk keupayaan udara, penerbangan yang diperlukan di Singapura untuk kegiatan terutama Selandar dan Changi, itu tentu sebagai negara, seluruh negara di dunia itu memberikan laluan. Tetapi kita juga akan memperoleh kemudahan kerana penerbangan, ratusan penerbangan sehari dari Semenanjung ke Sabah, Sarawak dan sebaliknya, itu juga akan peroleh manfaat kerana memudahkan perjalanan itu bila ada persefahaman, dan ini telah tercapai. Saya sebut seperti juga air, menangguhkan itu tidak memberi keuntungan kepada kita. Menangguhkan itu maknanya harga air itu masih kekal lama. Mempercepatkan itu maknanya ada keupayaan untuk meningkatkan sedikit kos harga air dan juga kesediaan Singapura untuk bersama menyelenggarakan projek di Sungai Johor yang akan memerlukan juga sedikit suntikan keuangan dari Singapura. Jadi bagi saya, hal ini telah kita capai. Malah kita bersetuju supaya Singapura dan Johor boleh menyegerakan kaji selidik untuk melihat keupayaan membesarkan sungai dan pengeluaran kapasiti air di negeri Johor. Tapi ini kita akan bincang bersama dengan kerajaan negeri Johor sebagai contoh. Begitu juga tentang ekspor tenaga dari Semenanjung dan di Sarawak, itu menguntungkan Semenanjung dan Sarawak, maknanya menguntungkan negara Malaysia. Jadi saya lihat dari segi ini telah dapat disegerakan.
I think these are all important issues to both countries. Some are very long-standing, as Prime Minister has said, and they haven't moved as fast as we would like them to. Sometimes there are reasons why things take time. But the PM and I both would like to move as expeditiously as we can to address these problems and address them. This is something which we can explain to our populations, to the rakyat, that these are some things which will benefit population on both sides and is good to do, win-win. Some of them may be not so conventional in the way we have been thinking about it before, but it is something which, if we take a long-term overall point of view, I think we can work out solutions which will address both countries' concerns and be beneficial to both countries. So I won't say what is fast and what is slow. I think each one will go as expeditiously as it can, because we are both equally determined. As in Malay, they say, sedikit-sedikit, lama-lama jadi bukit.
Yeah.
Tapi tak lama lagi.
Now I invite Ms. Afifa Arifin from CNA for the last question.
Good afternoon, Prime Ministers. Amid the current situation in the Middle East, what specific approaches will Singapore and Malaysia take to ensure that the reactions to the war and the ground sentiments in both countries do not have any spillover effects, especially on mutual investments, bilateral cooperation, and our long-standing ties?
I don't think they should affect our bilateral relations. I think we've each expressed our views on what's happening in the Middle East. Singapore has made repeated statements about this and condemned what's happening, the violence, the human tragedy of civilians and innocent victims being killed and massacred, and hoping that the two parties can make progress towards a negotiated two-state solution to the Middle East. And I think Singaporeans understand where we stand. Malaysia also has made its position clear. I think Datuk Sri is here. Their situation is not the same as ours because we have diplomatic relations with Israel, but at the same time we have friendly relations with the Palestine Authority. And Malaysia has very friendly relations with the Palestine Authority, but you don't have diplomatic relations with Israel. So the diplomatic situation is not identical, but there's no reason for that to cause a difficulty between Malaysia and Singapore.
I think what is the common position is important. I mean, Singapore and Malaysia supported the resolution, UN resolution, on this ceasefire. And that is, to me, very critical for now. And humanitarian assistance. That position is jointly endorsed by both countries and majority of the countries of the world. We take, of course, a much stronger position because, as I've said, the whole issue is not what happened 2 weeks ago, but the issue what we term as politics of dispossession. I mean, countries cannot continue to colonize another part of the Palestinian lands. But what is critical for now is, of course, peace and stop the killings of civilians, babies, and women. And of course, the sentiment in Malaysia is very strong. And I've been in touch with many of the Arab leaders too, and have expressed our position that we support a peaceful resolution, an immediate resolution of the conflict, but humanitarian assistance is paramount. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellencies. We invite you to take a handshake shot to look at the cameras before we end. Thank you very much. Terima kasih. We have now come to the end of the joint press conference.